Guten Tag. Last time, we talked about the story of Azora, and you guys and girls wanted me to follow the bomb and see where it would take us. That means our journey leads into Ashenville, a land owned by the Night Elves, which has seen quite a lot of conflict over the years. There was, of course, the War of the Ancients, which is over 10,000 years ago, the Night Elves versus their own Queen Azora and the Legion. There was the War of the Satyr, around 700 years after the War of the Ancients, where Satyrs left after the war, they rallied together to take on the Night Elves, and far more recently, we have the Horde stepping into their lands. In Warcraft 3, we had Thrall and Grommash follow the words of Prophet Medivh to take their people to Kalimdor. Grum, he was feeling the influence of the demonic blood within his veins, which made him far more aggressive than usual. They struck out at Jaina Proudmoore and Alliance forces, who were also following the words of Medivh, and Thrall, he could only tolerate so much. He sent Grommash and his warsong deeper into Ashenville and ordered them to establish an outpost. Thrall believed that the hard labor would keep them distracted until he returned from Stone Talon Peak, but instead, Grum ended up in a fight with the Night Elves. Truan the Whisperwind had hoped that these refugees were merely passing through Ashenville en route to other lands, but she had been wrong. Some of the Horde's green-skinned orcs, they made war on the forests. They stole from the woodlands without asking, felling trees with reckless abandon. She would suffer their presence no more. The Sentinels struck out. Even the demigod Cenarius rallied to protect their lands, but Grum and his forces, they drank from demonic blood once more, left behind by Manoroth. This gave them the strength to conquer their foes, send Cenarius back to the Emerald Dream, but it also bound them to the Pit Lord's will once more. Not all was lost though. Thrall and Jaina, they decided to team up against the Legion, and when they saw what had happened to the Warsong, they made a combined daring assault through Warsong lines and captured Grommash. In unison, Horde Shaman and Alliance Priest, they called on the magics to purge the bloodlust from his veins. For the first time in days, the cloud of hate lifted from Grommash's eyes. He saw the monster that he had become, and shame overwhelmed him. And then, he remembered who had done this to him. Manoroth was still out there somewhere, stalking through the forest, reveling in the carnage he had unleashed. Grommash and Thrall, they both knew that if they did not confront the demon, their people would be doomed.
The boy believed you could be saved, but he didn't know what burns within your soul. Within your heart, you know we are the same. Thrall, the blood haze has lifted. The demon's fire has burnt out in my veins. I have freed myself. No, old friend. You've freed us all.
Grommash Hellscream sacrificed his own life to set his people free. To this day, you can still find a memorial left behind to honor his heroic deed, as well as pockets of demons and even Manoroth's floating broken spear. While they claimed victory over the Pit Lord and even allied with the Night Elves against Archimonde and the Legion, the conflict here in Ashenville, that would never truly rest. The Horde decided to settle in the barren lands of Durotar, where resources are pretty hard to come by. Their people, they needed wood to build homes for their families. No trade negotiations, they often ended in failure. So the conflict that we saw in Warcraft 3, that mirrored on during Classic, especially in a little battleground known as Warsong Gulch. The gleaming purple and emerald forest of Ashenville are more than just a pleasant woodlands. To the Warsong orcs, who name themselves Outriders, their prize cache of building planks. To the Night Elf and Silverwing Sentinels, their home with the trees being sacred. where the turned soil and tree stumps surrounding Horde lumber mills start to encroach on Ashenville's timberlands, these two factions clash. Each group recruits heroes from far and wide, the Hordes to batter back the defenders and clear the forests, and the Alliance to shatter the aggressors and stop the disappearance of the precious land. Capturing flags might seem like an unorthodox method of settling these disputes, but it's symbolic and hardly without bloodshed. Whoever holds their defeated foe's banner will show all who look upon the forest that their claim is the strongest, and dictate the future of one of the most important ancestral lands of the Kaldorei. So even under Thrall's leadership, the Horde and the Alliance, they waged war over Ashenville, but around the time of the Cataclysm, things started to change. The world was in turmoil, to which Thrall left his people behind to follow his path to shamanism, which left behind Garrosh Hellscream, son of Gromash Hellscream, to lead the Horde. Now he was far less diplomatic when it came to the Alliance, and he believed that the Horde should claim whatever they needed. No longer should they shrivel away in the barren lands, pleading with the weaker races for resources. The war with the Night Elves and the Alliance that was escalated as Garrosh had his forces bring Magnetar from Northrend and send him out into Ashenville to take care of the Night Elves. His tactics might have succeeded, was it not for Varian Wrynn and the Worgen. The Human King came to terms with his Lokash side, empowered by the Wild God himself. He led the charge into the forest. With claw and fang and steel, they defeated this Horde push, but Garrosh, he wasn't about ready to give up on trying to claim the lands. That is where we come in, and our questing experience into Ashenville can begin. The Horde is mainly on the assault. Heroes are sent out to Morshan ramparts within the Northern Barrens to reinforce the troops against the retaliating Night Elves. This leads them deeper into the zone, where the Horde has already taken Silverwind Refuge, a location that the Elves thought impenetrable. They have the Warsong Lumber Camp up and running, and we help Torek and his Splinter Tree Raider crew with a quick assault on Silverwing outposts. One of the most contested Horde posts in the area. That would have to be Splinter Tree, which is fully surrounded by a Night Elf army. They have massive ancients, siege weapons and elves, keeping our forces quite occupied, nearly wiping them out, but we're able to turn the tide of battle. With Draka, an orc fighting the war within a Demolisher. She knows full well that they're not supposed to meddle with demonic energies, but these are desperate times. She has us go out and fill up a canister at Felfire Hill with Fel magic. Durak, a shady warlock orc in the mine, he then transforms us into an imp, so that none can actually recognize us, and with the powers of the Legion, we bombard the elves and we break their siege. Perhaps she should have thought more about her actions than she did, since this will most likely be the end of her. We were able to push back the attack that would have otherwise meant the end of Splinter Tree, but Garrosh, or Vol'jin, or now Saurfang these days, they have no love for those that use Fel, and she wants us to explain our actions and soften their hearts. They acknowledge that Draka should not be playing with powers that she cannot possibly understand, but it's actually Durak that draws that attention. They sense foul things about the Orc Warlock, and their instincts are rarely wrong. We're told to find him and tell him that the Horde will have nothing to do with him. But turns out that the Orc was actually a demon in disguise manipulating us, so we put the foul creature of the Legion down. Quite a shame though, as Durak, he helped us with doing some massive damage to the elves, specifically to their forest hearts. With the blood of our enemies, Durak uses his powers to corrupt it, to which we then bring the blood to Dordanil Barrow-Den and we corrupt the hearts. The sacred relic of the arrogant elves, it will be turned against them. And on the Alliance side, we can see that it has quite an effect on the elves. Their heroes are sent out by Gnarl, an ancient of war, to actually collect the hearts, as they plan to use his power to replenish the forest. But when they arrive at the den, they find out what the Horde has done. All of the druids here are now either dead or driven insane. Their leaders, Tennille Darkwood, Ufil Mooncall, and Mavericks Cloudsbreak, they're too far gone to save now, so we have to put them down. The spirits in the area, merely victims of the Horde's evil, they hold the key to collecting the hearts, as they can drop untainted spirits, which we can turn into a power of nature, a power we use to sever the heart and bring it back to Gnarl. Thankfully, the Ancient of War is able to cleanse it from its corruption, and its power can once more be used to save Ashenville from withering, but the druids at Dordanil Barrow-Den, they're gone forever.
In the arms of the angel, fly away from here.
The Alliance does their best to strike back at the Horde. Their Warsong Lumber Camp that is a blight upon their lands, with the forest crying out in pain. We take care of their explosives, we take out the lumber forces, even their overseer Gortak and envoy Sheila, who was carrying important information for the Horde troops. Rainwood Tower and Retreat. They face heavy assault from the Horde forces, and despite Keeper Ordanis, one of the eldest sons of Cenarius, resurrecting the fallen Dryads as soon as they touch the ground, they're here at a stalemate. Something needs to be done to change the tide of battle, so they decide to invoke the essence of Shadumbra, the great cat of the forest, and with a brutal display of ferocity, we swipe out the Horde assault. They in turn are able to slay Keeper Ordanis, while at Mistress Outpost, things are a little bit on fire as the Sentinels are barely able to hold the line. They're losing hard here, and we're not going to get out of this one without taking the fight to the Horde. So with a small squad backing us up, we wreck the Wreckers and the Horde invaders. Vero Ironhand and Delgran the Purifier, members of the Argent Dawn that have been here since Classic, they tried to defend the post when the Horde first attacked, but they have fallen in battle. As a last way to pay our respects, we go out and collect their hammer and prayer book. These are their most prized possessions, which we send back to their loved ones. Now from Mestra's post, the Alliance rides out to Astranar, where the Horde has probably done the most damage to the area, as they bombarded the town from the sky with a newly developed kind of bomb. The town is burning, so we put out the fires and then return the fire. Now that is the major conflict going on in the zone, the fight between the Horde and Alliance over dominance of Ashenvale. But of course, these are not the only threats. For example, the local Furbolg, they're considered a peaceful race most of the time, but their close connection to the forest, it left them vulnerable to corruption that was spread through the land. Not to mention that they're often attacked without provocation, or they're enslaved to the other races. Here in Ashenvale, we have the Thistlefer Furbolg, who can't keep the paws of items that they should not possess. Mitsua, a troll on the Horde side, he says that the Furbolg attacked and killed his own kind, who were traveling with many sacred troll charms, and he would like us to get them back. On the Alliance side, however, we're told a different story. It's true that their past leader did indeed steal the idol of Remulus, an idol which once belonged to Brol Bearmantle, which then got corrupted with Fel, and in turn, it corrupted their whole tribe, but this time, they didn't steal. It was actually given to them by the trolls of Sorumgar as a sign of friendship, but a deadly friendship as it turns out, since these charms are designed to corrupt anyone that is not a troll. Their chieftain is now too far gone, so we put him down, while we also get rid of the charms for them. It's good that an outsider did this, as this way they'll avoid a civil war, and they might actually find a new leader, one that does not have a tendency to so easily trust outsiders. Not all Furbolg need to be put down though, quite a few, but not all of them. Some actually might be willing to work for us, but it does require a little bit of preparation. Once upon a time, a human wizard by the name of Dartol, he visited Ashenvale, and at first they thought that he was there to learn their ways. Turns out that he had quite a bit more evil on his mind, as he learned the ways of druidic magic, and he constructed a rod, which in turn would allow him to befriend and then control the Furbolg. They're uncertain of what exactly he was planning to do with that, but perhaps we can use this rod for our own needs. The Night Elf Teronis, he went to Lake Valatim to search for an item that he thought could slow the Furball attack on his people. He mentioned a gem, but by the time that we find him, he's already dead.
In the arms of the angel.
The old god influence in the area, it has taken his life, so we defeat and search the tentacles for the gem, and then we meet up with a dryad named Sheldrin, who can help us look for the next part of the rod. The iron shaft that is found at the Howling Vale, surrounded by corrupted treants, while the iron pummel that is on the guard by Oso Bramblescar at the Shady Nook. Normally, we'd simply ask the druid for the item, but it appears that the corruption of the forest heart that has taken hold of them, and they no longer listen to reason. By playing possum, we're able to elude their gaze and claim the item. Sheldrin is kind enough to reforge it for us, and with the power of Dartol's rod, we take on the form of a Furbolg and make contact with Krog. He cares little for the Alliance or the Horde. Both of them have visited many atrocities upon his people, but he does care about the salvation of the Furbolg. He has us challenge Chief Murgut, king of the Foulweald, who sold out his own tribe to the Horde when they took Silverwind Refuge. Then Krog has some modifications for the rod in mind, as he has us slay Ren Bloodtooth, king of all the Ashenvale Furbolg, and we fashion his skull to the rod. This allows us to use its power and motivate the captured Furbolg. Have them rise up against the Horde enslavers at Silverwind Refuge. Rise up and destroy their jailers. So those are most of our adventures with the furbolgs in the area. But of course, we also have pockets of demons and satyrs that are still lurking in the area from previous attacks. They're planning, scheming and corrupting, not making the forest any prettier. Not all of the satyrs are bad though. One in particular actually finds his way to redemption, and the history behind the satyr is that during the War of the Ancients, that war 10,000 years ago, there was a highborn named Xavius who made contact with Sargeras. Malfurion Stormrage. He thought he dealt with him during the war, but his spirit was taken by the demonic Lord of the Legion and then transformed into the first of the Satyr. He worked on spreading his corruption amongst the other Night Elves, making more and more Satyrs. He even had a tower in Ashenville, but his fate would be to be turned into a tree. They didn't exactly take care of those that he already corrupted though, and one amongst them is now seeking redemption. Redemption that he would find in saving the life of another. This all begins within Astranar, where we meet up with Palturus Whitemoon, whose daughter Relara is very ill. We try many things to save her life. The maple leaves of the ancient Bavran, slain by the Forsaken, which we then bathe in the light of a loon. It brings some spark of life back to the child, but sadly, it's no cure. We try another remedy, a stone known as a loon's tear, but something doesn't seem quite right about the soot-covered stone, as it's been tarnished by the eruption of Thunder Peak. Placing it in a stew, it lifts her delirium a little, but it's simply not enough. We must take the tear to the Moonwell of Purity and wash it in the sacred waters of Elune. As we do, a voice from inside the Moonwell flows into our mind. You seek to cure a child, but know that all things come at a cost. To the east lies Rainwood Tower. Standing outside the tower, next to my Moonwell, is one who has fallen into corruption. Everus Illwhisper seeks forgiveness and redemption. Will you help him to attain that which he desires, and in so doing, achieve your own goal? As we meet Everus, he sneers at us first, but when he realizes that we're not here to chastise him, he changes his expression and is more than willing to help. We're sent out to find members of the Felmusk of Nightrun, his former clan of Satyr, who was stolen moonstones with great healing properties. Surely, these will be enough to heal the girl. But like the voice told us, all things come at a cost. With his razor-sharp claws, Everus digs into his chest and removes his beating heart, placing it with the fallen moonstones. Miraculously, the Satyr does not die. Instead, he is bathed in a warm light. By the power of Elune, Everus Illwhisper does not die. Instead, he is transformed into Everus the Redeem, and his sacrifice also saves Relara Whitemoon, her father weeping with joy.
In the arms
Now the spot where we picked up Elune's tear, the Thunder Peak area, that is not erupting from anything natural, it's actually reacting to the cataclysm, and the elements are out of balance. Lord Magmafar is shouting from its peak. He will engulf all of Ashenville with his fire. So on the Horde side, you party with the Goblin Stickwad, while the Alliance, they have the Worgen Sabina Pilgrim, both of which are of the Earthen Ring. To bring balance, we have the water elemental Arcantus, who sends us out with one of his freezing surgers to deal with Lord Magmafar's lava ragers. We have Kor, the element of earth, who wants us to use the gift of earth to close off the lava fissures. And finally, the Vortex, element of wind. He needs us to steel ourselves as we become a whirling vortex ready to take on the fire. Despite all his boasting, Lord Magmafar goes down pretty easily, and the fire is subdued. The four elements have returned to harmony, and the rest of Ashenville is spared this fiery fate. But sadly, they don't reward us with the Avatar title. And then, our final major story in the zone, that takes us to the west, where the Horde is the outpost of Sorumgar, the Naga are out in force, and of course, the old god corruption that I mentioned earlier. At Lake Valatim, we have Harbinger Apothic leading the charge, while Keeper Hardwise, he's doing his very best to hold his ground against the creatures of the void. We take care of the Harbinger, but his true source, that of course still lies on the ground, working very hard at their schemes within Blackfathom Deeps. On the beach, Zoram Strand, we also have the Naga at large, as the name of the area that actually comes from a very old city called Zoram. This was once part of the ancient Night Elf Empire, but when they lost the War of the Ancients and the palace started to fill up with water, their queen Azora made a bargain with the old gods, who transformed herself and her followers into the Naga. The land of Kalimdor was split apart as the Sundering took place. Now statuettes and the Ring of Zoram, said to be the key to any lock within the city, they're collected for archaeology purposes, while the Horde works on securing their base. Taking care of the Naga, lighting the lighthouse so that their reinforcements don't crash at sea, as well as grabbing materials to repair their shady boats. Yet both sides know that there's evil lurking down below. Once dedicated to the Night Elf's goddess Elune, Blackfathom Deeps was thought to be destroyed during the Sundering, lost beneath the ocean. Millennia later, members of the Twilight's Hammer cult, they were drawn to the temple by whispers and foul dreams. After sacrificing untold numbers of innocents, the cult was rewarded with a new task to protect one of the old god's most cherished creatures, a pet that is still in need of nurturing before he can unleash his dark powers on the world. The Twilight's Hammer, together with the force of the old gods, they have mostly replaced the bosses of Classic for their failures and are carrying on the original plan. Akumai must grow, an ancient evil that carries within him a small measure of the old god's power. This three-headed Hydra is greatly feared for his mindless savagery and insatiable hunger for living flesh. But the Twilight's Hammer, they worship him as the divine sign that the old gods will soon return. A divine sign that heroes snuff out, which doesn't exactly make the old gods happy.
Savor this victory, mortal. Now that you've heard our whispers, it is only a matter of time until you belong to us.
And that is pretty much the story of Ashenvale, Horde and Alliance conflict over territory and resources, with a couple of side quests in between. Now I don't believe that this conflict has ever been resolved, so Ashenvale as it stands, it's still contested territory. We did have Through the Whisper Winds at the end of Siege of Orgrimmar, the end of Mist of Pandaria, and a moment in which we kicked Garrosh out of the Mantle of War Chief. In that moment, they were willing to allow the Horde to use of Azshara's lumber, with the condition that they had to abandon Ashenvale for good. Then again, Varian also said that they were going to investigate cleansing the plague from Gilnea's land and contain Sylvanas, so yeah. You might wonder, well, what about that bomb from Azshara? Weren't we following that one? But although that storyline does start in this zone, it plays out more within Stoneteller Mountains. Which means that the choice is up to you. Are we going to finish the saga of the bomb, or are we going to explore elsewhere? Let me know in the comments down below. You could of course also subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you liked the video, all that good stuff. And until next time guys, see ya!